Welcome, dear viewers, to a new episode of Dialogue Horizon. This episode will be fully dedicated to the independence of Sudan on the 1st of January 1956, the 67th anniversary. And I take this opportunity to send my greetings to all people of Sudan on the occasion of the independence, the 76th anniversary of independence, plus the new year, hoping that the new year with it comes a solution to the protracted problem and dilemma of Sudan in the governance, and to put an end to this turmoil and these differences. Definitely we'll talk about the independence, the history. We'll go back to the history until we come to the recent years. That's why we have very happy to host in this episode two of our distinguished guests. Professor Manzoor Abdullah Manzoor, he's known to most of the viewers. He used to be the director of the Peace Research Institute of University of Khartoum, and he's still a professor in University of Khartoum. He has a lot of contributions and activities in the different NGO, different international institutions. He's very active in this area, especially in the area of peace and settlements. Also, we have our friend with hosted last week, Osman Wash. He's known. Osman Wash is the vice president of a national party, Justice and Peace.
Liberation and Justice.
Yes.
Liberation and Justice.
Liberation and Justice, yes.
Yeah.
Party.
LGP.
And he's also an economist in a way, because he's an auditor. So welcome both of you in this important episode about the independence of Sudan.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me and Mr. Professor Manzoor. And it will be a good day for Sudanese people. We praise the struggle of the Sudanese people, parties, NGOs, and the society altogether.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, let's start first. Go back in history. Start by Professor Manzoor Abdullah Manzoor. Many people, there is a controversy in the history of independence of Sudan. Some analysts and some historians, they think that the way the Sudan got its independence was a little bit easy, and it did not include any struggle or bloodshed, or like other countries like Algeria with the French colonization and other countries. And because they attribute this to the change of policies of the colonizer, the British, especially the British, they thought they decided to pull out gradually from especially in Africa, because their main purpose was to reap the resources of the country, like in Sudan, the cotton, the Yazira scheme, which they established by the British rule. And so they went, they seemed that some people, they say that, it seemed that they reached the maximum from what they need, and things will change to being non-profitable to them. These people, they say that actually the condominium, the rule, British, and they granted the Sudanese their independence because they already wanted to do this. Also, at the same time, after the Second World War, another stronghold, the Eastern Pole, the Soviet Union, the Chinese, and the Eastern Pole, started to be opponents to the Americans and the Europeans. So that's why some people, they say that that's why they decided to pull out, and even some people, they go down to the fact that even the two revolutions, let us say one popular, which is of what Haboba, 1908, and the White Brigade, the 1924, Ali Abdul Latif or Abdul Fatih al-Mazdis, they said this also did not play a big role in the independence and the struggle. About this controversy and opinions, what do you think? How do you evaluate the independence of Sudan? How did it come? Is it that easy, that simple? Is it true? Do you agree with this?
Well, I think there is a lot of truth in what you said, and there are a lot of plausible arguments with regard to how people look at independence. And yes, if you compare Sudan, for instance, to other countries like Algeria, we haven't had a big struggle to get our independence. And you mentioned what Haboba and the White Flag movement, and these two, one of them occurred in 1908 and the other one in 1924, and we got our independence actually more than 30 years after these two events, or almost 50 years from Haboba's movement.
Yeah.
So one could say that yes, there is no direct link between these movements and our independence, but let us not forget the fact that that decade was a decade of independence across the British colonies. It all started with India. I think that got its independence in 1947, and then other African countries. So it was a wave of independence in many African countries, and Sudan was part of that wave. Sudan's position was a bit special because it was ruled by the condominium, the Egyptians and the British. And we all know that there were differences of opinion with regard to how these two countries governed the country. And there are also differences of opinion with regard to the position from independence. I want to introduce an element here. We may be talking about it later, which is the Graduate Congress, because that was also part of the equation that eventually led to the independence of the country. Just to give you a very short and clear answer, I think compared to other countries, yes, our independence was relatively easy because it didn't involve a struggle that was as tough as the one in Algeria or other countries.
Do you think the two big leaders, the two sects, late Abdurrahman al-Mahdi and Ali al-Mahdi, did they play any role?
Well, that is part of what I wanted to talk about, which is the Graduate Congress. Because the Graduate Congress started in 1938. Actually, it could be said that it started 1936 with a famous lecture that was given by Ahmad Khair in Madani. That was published later on, and in 1938 the Graduate Congress appeared, and interestingly enough, they got the approval from the British rule to register the Graduate Congress as initially as some sort of a social or cultural body, but of course eventually it got involved into politics. And when they presented that memorandum to the colonial rule about the demands that they asked, I think there are around 20 or 13 demands, the Governor General rejected their claim, and that led to some sort of a problem within the Congress itself, because it was divided between the hardliners, chaired by Azhari, and the moderates by Ibrahim Ahmed. And eventually this led to the appearance of the two sects you mentioned, because Sayyid Abdurrahman was among the moderates, and they created the Ummah Party, and Azhari and his people, supported by Sayyid Ali, created Hizb al-Ashiqa, which was pro-Egypt.
Pro-Egypt.
Exactly. So this is why I tend to link all the political developments in this country that followed independence to the Graduate Congress that was the nuclei of our political parties.
Yes, that's very good. Okay, that was Osman Bash. Do you have any additional comment on this? Because this is the key question of the episode.
Yeah, let me say that independence, that is in 1965 or 56, is coming after the World War II, because World War II is a complete arrangement of the whole world. It's a new system, because the Axis were being defeated, and to defeat that, the allies had been making alliance with others, especially in the third world, in the Arab area, in African area also. Sudan Defense Forces, even though there is breach, but their activities in the World War II was being a very crucial role in defeating of the Axis, because they are fighting into the south, to the southeast at Eritrea and some the Italians, and also to the north to Libya and to Egypt to Alamein. So the Sudan Defense Forces was being very, very active, and there is an agreement for an entitlement of this activity. They had been asked to or awarded some time of war so as Sudan will be independent. So what we have to realize that what the military of Sudan has been later been effective in the politics of Sudan, because these elements of Sudan Defense Forces had been a crucial role in the independence. That is happening also in other areas also, because when they are running alliance, they had also an agreement with the Arab world, especially in the area of Jordan and what we call it the King Hussein or Faisal Hussein. They are being actively in defeating the Axis. So this make a contribution of our military later, Sudan military forces, because it was being known as Sudan Defense Forces at that time, later transferred to Sudan military forces. The others also, for sure, others had been contributed. It is not always military or only war can make change in the philosophy, because the two World War successors, they are the Soviet and the Americans. They making a rival. So this dual system had made a complete change in the order, in the new order after World War II. So Sudan people, especially on the national air, it diverted mostly to against the imperialism of America, what we call it, and called for national alliance for independence and enlightenment also about the role of imperialism and these things, and using of resources of our country and these things, making later to what is known as the Graduates Congress, Graduates Congress, and later on the parties. It became, as Professor said, it is a process of enlightenment that happened. Even the British had the role, because University of Khartoum, the College of Khartoum at that time had made a lot contribution to that issue. But also those are coming from outside, especially from Egypt, who studied in Egypt, and others who are even foreigners had been working in Sudan, also contributed to this national. And we already know the role of especially the Communist Party, the Communist Party, and the Arab Alliance also had been working. The Ba'ath al-Arabi had been also active in the Arab region. So those are the two elements had been working in the process of enlightenment towards independence.
Okay, that's very, very clear. Okay, now we come maybe to the next step, which you mentioned, Professor Manzoor, is the Graduate Congress, which was established in almost 1937, 36, or 38, up to 1947, almost 9 years.
Yeah.
Some people also, there is a controversy in the evaluation of the Congress, the Graduate Congress. First, the people, they say that they did not start in politics, they started in the cultures, in education. They started a little bit far from politics. Maybe it was a strategy to avoid, to circumvent the apprehension by the colonizers, or anyhow. Some people, they say their role first started until it died. It did not play a big role in the politics. This is what they say. And also they say that they restricted the membership of the Congress on graduates of Gordon Memorial College. It was University of Khartoum now, but it was called Gordon Memorial College. These Gordon, these are graduates from their few, they are not many. So the graduate congress died because the membership did not swell or grow to be so effective. So what is your evaluation on the role of the graduate congress?
Yeah, I think much of what you say is right, and let's not forget the circumstances during which the graduate congress appeared. As I mentioned, the idea came from Ahmad Khair, who delivered a lecture in the graduates club in Madani, where he called for graduates to play a political role in the country. And then that lecture was subjected to debates, and 2 years later, specifically in February 12, 1938, we witnessed the birth of the Graduate Congress. And history books tell us that the Congress was attended by 1,118 graduates.
At that time, it's a big number.
It's a big number by all means. And initially, the activity of the Congress was, as you rightly said, was on social and cultural issues and education. Actually, they focused so much on education, so much so that during the first 2 years, they contributed to the establishment of like 100 schools.
School. Okay.
Yes, their activity during the first 2 years was apolitical, and I think that was a tactic from their part to buy the acceptance of the colonial government. Because I was a bit surprised to know that the government or the Governor General allows them to register officially, so they were recognized. Of course, the Egyptian part of the condominium was unhappy about this development, and I think the relationship between the Graduate Congress and Egypt wasn't good until Ali Mahir, the then Egyptian Prime Minister, visited Sudan in 1940, and he met with the executive committee of the Graduate Congress and then the Egyptian position changed a bit. Now, the turning point came in 1942, when the Graduate Congress presented a note to the Governor General listing 12 demands that should be realized, and that Sudan should be an independent country, and that foreigners should not be allowed to take all the positions, and that priority should be given to the Sudanese nationals, and a lot of things. This memo angered the Governor General, and he dismissed it. He didn't accept it. He told the Congress that you are not representing the Sudanese people. This is a government responsibility. Yeah. Now, when this happened, a problem was created within the Congress itself, with some people saying that we should not confront the condominium government, so that we make sure that we would be allowed to do what we do. And this group was led by Ibrahim Ahmed. The other group adopted a radical position, a confrontational position, and this group was led by Ismail al-Azhari. Now, in this process, Sayyid Abdul Rahman appeared, and he supported the moderates' position, while Sayyid Ali was with hardliners, and this situation ended up in the appearance of the Ummah party, led by Sayyid Abdul Rahman, and the Ashiqa party, led by al-Azhari, but supported by Sayyid Ali.
Which was transformed to National Unionist Party.
Yeah, later on.
Later on.
The Ashiqa party, they tried to gain the support of Egypt. Because Egypt wasn't happy about how things are operating in the country, and they tried to do that. Now, this is actually I see it as the beginning of the formation of the sectarian political parties in the country. So the Graduate College actually is the basis of the two sectarian political parties.
The Graduate Congress.
The Graduate Congress. Sorry.
Because of the split.
Because of the split.
After the memorandum.
Exactly.
Some people, they were a little bit moderate and the other hardliners.
Exactly. Precisely.
The Unionist Party, supported by
By
Maragani and Egypt.
Exactly. Precisely.
And then this, the
And of course, there was also that rumor which he was circulating that Sayyid Abdurrahman wanted to be a king of Sudan.
yes.
And that also, made some people nervous, and they tried to ally with Egypt. So we have a very fascinating history if we look back at those developments. And I firmly believe that those developments affected our later political development in the country.
It did affect.
Up to the present time.
Yes,
We
it
see
did
this
affect.
is happening.
Okay, Nawad, it's very interesting. What can you add?
what the professor is saying is that the formation of the political system and how it goes on. But what we have to remember that the Congress, the Graduation Congress, they are like an NGO, like an NGO more than a political party, because they have different ideas, different ideological groups, but they came to work for the whole Sudanese, especially in the areas, as I said, education, and to be part of the ruling the system, because they are working. They want to also gain a position in the civil servants, and these things are very important because they are working on these issues. But the appearance of the leaders, of the sectarial leaders, had been working actively to recruit those people, because they are from different sectors, different parts of Sudan, different ideologies. So it is easy for those sectors to recruit them for their work, because for that, most of these graduates, the shiny lights were being attracted by the sectarian system. So they became two sections, two tiers of our political system, and they have been active. Ahmad Khair and others, and Mahjoub Zarrouk and others, and Mahjoub and others. So all these are becoming a shining figures of our political parties, especially the two parties, even though the British had been thinking, because they are working before with the locals, the native government, the native administrations, had been working for a complete different party, which is known as the Republicans. As I think maybe Dictor will be familiar with this issue more than me. These are because they already know the British. They already know the Ummah Party, and it is history against the British or any colonial power. And also they know the Unionists who have been very close to the Egyptians. That means they have to work out for another people to be aligned to them, to be part of their system. So they worked for a party of Republicans, mainly from the native administrations. Still, those native administrations are still active in our politics since then. But maybe they don't make a complete party different. But every party, every political party have to work with them, or to encourage them in their part for the best of reaching to the public, to the masses, because they are very effective, especially in the local areas. So what I want to say, that the independence is not only a role of the civil servants or the NGOs or political parties, or also our military, as I said before, but also the international arena is also different. So the rivaling figures of the international, especially the socialists and the capitalists, have been very actively working in the whole world. So it is a mood that working in the whole world, and also became, in a way or another, even it became very difficult and expensive for the British also to rule if they have make that access, because they can easily access to our resources which are made, because Sudan scheme, the Jazeera scheme and other things have been very connected. Even in education became automatically very connected to the bridge system or to the international economy, more integrated to the international economy. So that means they don't have to use their resources to manage, because these resources are flowing automatically to them. So I mean, they also prefer not to pay much for their to ruling those people, because they are not accepting them anyway. So and the resources are flowing to them easily, so they do not have to make that.
From this, can we say that from this history which you, Professor Manzoor, said, and now we are adding to it, that the circumstances on which the two big parties, the sectarian parties, Ansar and Khatmi actually, were affected the performance of the two big political parties since that time, because we had a problem in the governance after independence.
This is not
a very good question, I think. Also, you will add to this. Does this mean that this is the way they brought up both parties as rivals? At the onset of the establishment, both parties, they started working at loggerheads. Since that time, does this affect the
reality is that Sudan has been segmented very far in two tiers from very early time, at the time of the Mahdiya or Abdullah the Taishi era, because at that time had been the militant, the Taishi rule had been very militant enough. That makes very line of differences between two tiers of our community. Most of the people who are coming from the West are being brought for the became more militant, to the effect there is a ties with Egypt. That means most of the Nile Valley had been working with the Egyptians, and these things, the relation was there, and this was very opposite directions from very early time. And it will well known that makes a part of our divisions, it's a Sudan divisions, not other parties, but before then, because the effect of the militant rule, that means rule at the Mahdiya era, that is from 1985 to 1889, before the coming of the Kuchner or Gardoun, I mean Kuchner, he is, yeah, before coming of Kuchner to Undurman, these 13 years had been very effective to the segmentation of Sudan, in politically at least. So that they departed the thing, but most of the Nile Valley to the north had been to the north more.
Egypt.
Yes, and later it been to the what we call it the religion sects, in Sudan, by Khatmiya and others. Yes, yeah, the religion sects, what we call it, the sects or religion sects, maybe.
Sect, it's a sect actually, Daifa.
Yeah, the Khatmiya, led by Muhammad Marghani and others, became part, and the others who been part of Al-Mahdiya, that is the Ansar, had a complete religion sect, different religion sect. So these two parts had making the mood of Sudanese interaction in politics.
Okay, the same question, but everybody knows that after independence, only 11 years out of 67 years, only democratic parliamentary rule by the most responsible. The two big parties are responsible, and these are the two sectarian parties: the DUP, Democratic Unionist Party, which is Khatmiya sect, and the Ummah Party, which is Ansar sect or Mahdiya sect. Do you think the bringing up of those big parties, the reason for the diminishing?
Well, I think yes, the period that followed the death of Mahdi in January 1885 until the campaign of General Kitchener, was a very tough period in the country, because the Mahdi's state was at war with everybody, including itself. And that created a situation whereby some Sudanese people were supportive of Kitchener's campaign.
Yes.
Some Sudanese
They
people,
were part of
they fought,
the history.
they fought with Kitchener against the
Kitchener,
Mahdi's
yes,
state.
as soldiers.
Okay?
Yes.
So this has bearings in our later political developments. And what happened in the graduate Congress was also part and parcel of that political legacy.
Okay.
Now, I think a word that you used best described the two parties, loggerheads.
Yeah.
That's true. Because they have been competing, and I think the first military coup of General Aboud was a direct consequence of this kind of
Handover.
exactly, of political bickering between the two sectarian political parties.
Yeah, yeah.
So in a way, one can be as harsh as saying that yes, these two sectarian political parties were somehow responsible for the
this.
political mess.
Because the way they were brought up, the way they were established to be just each one trying to weaken the other.
Precisely. And this affected the political development of the country, regrettably, up to now.
Up to now.
You see,
up to this
because
moment.
whether we like it or not, they are still the two key political parties in the country. And
Yeah.
if we have elections, I think they will still be dominant,
Yeah.
even if they don't win in landslide. They will have a very
Majority.
effective political presence.
Yes, yes.
So yes, indeed.
It did affect.
Yeah, they affect the course of the political development.
That is very, very sad. Actually, it's very sad and alarming, because now what the situation we are living in it these days, or not actually, it is for almost more than a year, is something terrible. Nobody knows what will be the consequences, what will come next, because people all now it's extremely difficult that they will never come to any kind of consensus at any level, at any low level. Anyhow, this is another issue which is something a little bit sticky and muddy. But let us move to another area of independence, which is beautiful, but also it was spoiled by, which is the civil service. I remember in 1933 when the British appointed Mr. Simons as Governor General of Sudan, and after 10 years or so of 1943, he tried to include officials, the staff, Sudanese members in the civil service, which was entirely taken by the British. And this helped in the training of the Sudanese people. And at the end of the beginning of independence, Sudan has the beautiful and the most strong civil service. But due to ill practices of the parties and the revolutions, which came with the slogans of cleansing, not ethnic cleansing, but the cleansing of opponents. For example, after October, the leftists, they started a campaign on cleansing on
Policy
the
park,
yes. After Nimeri, also the communists, when they started, they did a lot of damage by purging the civil service of qualified persons. And so what can you say on the civil service? Do you believe that it is true that the performance of the political parties on the inherited civil service, which was a legacy, a real beautiful legacy from the civil service, and the English, they were proud of the civil service of Sudan. They were saying that we left the best civil service in the continent. But now I think we have the worst.
Yeah.
This question for both of you is very important. Okay.
What I would like to say is that when the British were out of Sudan and we have the independence, we are in a good position within our region anyway. We are the third in the African continent to have an independence after Egypt and Libya. That is into 65, and we are the first in South Sahara African, and other than Ethiopia, which is not colonized anyway. So we are at the good position at that time. Economically, we have a good progress, and also in the education. So our elites in that issue was being very effective. And civil servant is coming because of this education. Khartoum Memorial College, in any way, had been very effective in training and educating our first people, and they have been very effective to the extent that Hammarskjöld, the UN Secretary General, one day said, "You Sudanese are the Parisians of Africa." That means you are the best in Africa at that time. To the extent that they nominated someone, Sudanese one, for succeeding Hammarskjöld at that time, you know. So we have a good, they have been very effective, and also became very active in, not only in Sudan, but also in the region. We have been working with the Yemenis for their constitution, and with the Nigerians with the change of the system to Islamic ruling, especially in the north, and how to, and someone like Osman Mohamed Yassin was been working in the diplomatic code and training all the Africans in the diplomacy and these things. These are the shine thing of our good training, good education of our first civil service, and they have been effective. But the reality we are facing in any time, not only cleansing, but the rule of law. Because if you are attacked to a rule of law, you have to sustain a system that can flourish and to be systematically working for the best. But if there is no system of rule of law, that means everything change, and everything can change, because the system that working, any change in the government from a democratic to another coup, that means they have to be changed in those people who are working for it. And if you want to succeed, any coup, any change in government, there would be some type of change. Even in the democratic system, we launched, when you came, a party came to power, they launched their party people to change the policies that are being on the ground. So there is type of succession or launching, but within a law, within the law. That means they are not affecting every person, not only every civil servant to be, but who are making the policies are to be changed. Because if you are succeeding one party, succeeding others, they have people to come in. But in types of military succession, that everything to be eradicated, so as to become another loyal people to come in to work it out. This making some distortions, but still, what I have to say is still our civil service are working good if law is maintained. The problem is not the quality of the people who are working on the civil service, but the maintenance of law in the system that is making difficulty for our civil servant to work it properly. Everyone knows its role in the civil service. Everyone knows its role in the system, but law is changing. Law is changing, and no one is binding to laws. This makes a lot of difficulty for any civil servant to work it proper.
Okay, Professor Madur, why do you think the deterioration in the civil service? I remember civil service was one of the best in the colonization by the British. There was no nepotism, no corruption, no until heritage in the first years, until Aboud era, civil service was intact because they did not touch the civil service. So to what can you attribute this?
Well, I think before coming to the pair policies that were adopted by some governments, I have to make a point that the problem with the Sudan civil service started with the process of Sudanization.
Sudanization.
And we all know that when the British conquered the country, they concentrated their development efforts, whatever they might have been, in certain parts of the country.
Yes.
Where schools were found, so much so that by the time of independence, there are certain parts of the country that had the lion's share when it comes to graduates that can take civil service positions. So when the Sudanization happened, certain regions were almost excluded. And we all know that the South was almost left out. Very few positions were given to the Southerners, right? And that was one of the reasons why we had problems in South Sudan that eventually led to the independence of South Sudan. So this is a point that we need to recall. And then we come to the troubles that were caused by the policy of purging the civil service from qualified people whose loyalty was in doubt to the regime in power. And this happened, as you rightly mentioned, in 1965, after the ousting of Booth. The leftists were
Sloganos.
exactly, and then the Nimeri did that, and then the Ingas has defeated all the previous regimes when it comes to purging qualified persons because their loyalty was in doubt. And I agree with Usman that the critical issue is the enforcement of law. Unfortunately, this is also one of the weak links in the civil service. Law is not observed, and actually one can go as far as saying that there is a contempt of law, especially at the present time. And I'm just we have followed the incident that happened in Eastern Sudan 2 days ago when the public prosecutor issued an arrest warrant to one of the persons in the east, and instead of handing himself to the authorities, he brought his tribal people to protect him. This is a very serious development, and I think the law enforcement institutions need to be respected, not only within the civil service, but even at large. So in addition to the deterioration in the civil service due to the political interventions and sacking people for the simple fact that they are not loyal to the political regime in power, plus the weaknesses in enforcing the laws and adhering to the regulations that govern the civil service, I think all these come together to have a crumbling civil service. And maybe my colleague and friend Usman is a bit optimistic. I'm not. We have a very serious situation in the civil service. As we speak, very serious situation. And I think if you recall in the constitutional declaration that was aborted by the military coup, there was a very explicit clause talking about reforming civil service. And I think this should be one of the top agendas of any coming government. It has to be addressed.
The civil service is the backbone of development, actually.
Of course.
It's actually the backbone.
Of course.
Okay, now if you move something linked to the performance and the rule of law and the civil service, which is the resources. When the colonization, when they started, they had it back at the back of their mind that Sudan is a big farm for cotton, and they reaped for quite a long time the cotton, the high quality of the cotton in Jadira scheme, which was established by the British. But the product, the raw cotton, as everyone knows, goes to the textile weaving factories of England. Later, after the British they left, people failed to develop the resources, the huge resources of Sudan till now.
Yeah.
Till now, why the regimes, the different regimes, democratic regime they were completely busy in their political activities. Nothing happened in development in a democratic regime. Most of the developments and the industrialization happened in the military eras. There is Aboud, 6 years Aboud, he made a lot of industry in different parts of the country.
Yeah.
There were 6 and 7. and then Nigeria, and then so what's the reason that Sudan is everyone talks about the resources of Sudan, but
Yeah.
since that time nobody can get the benefit from the resources of Sudan, including gold, which is something we have to talk about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
What I have to say that once at the time of independence, we have economically we have in a good position. I mean, because we have the railway that is very important, making thousands of miles in South Sudan, from very north to the south to Wow. That means it's been very effective in transporting most of our goods to the ports, Port Sudan, from the very west and to the south also, and to the north. So the railway is good, and we have the Jazeera scheme, and we have a good product in that issue. So our economy at that time was the best in the region. But what is lacking, the whole system is lacking, because what I already said, that should be an stabilization of a political system that to succeed and to develop ideas and policies that can enable, because we are not being stable enough, because from the day one we have problems in South Sudan because of guerrilla movements, and the involvement of military came from this side to our politics, because I said they have been part in the independence and the recognition of their role in the World War II. And the other thing, because our military was being used not for the maintaining of Sudan as a country, but in the civil war, like a civil war or internal maintaining order inside the country. Always, military are not used for maintaining order in the, that is policing. Police is, so the growing of the military over and taking the responsibility and law and order, making them involved in politics very much. Because if you see in 1985, everybody coming to power is saying that military had been deteriorating and they have no access and on the resources enough to work in the south or to combat the movements, and these things happen in that is in 1969 by Nimeri, and again in 1985 also they have raised their appeal to the democratic government and saying the effect of the military, the situation in the military was very bad enough so that the movements in South are almost attacking to very north until to Kosi, or even been attacked in a way or another. So these problems had making instability in the region, in Sudan. So they are not given any chance to work for the economy as a democratic government, or even mostly maybe the other thing that the rival between the two parties is also making a lot of problems. They are not taking care of the policies that they can implement it for our economy. Only in the military era had been some successions, but still they had been combated by others also, because in the early, before the Addis Ababa agreement, even the Nimeri rule, that is May rule, had been combated by the Americans. They had been they are working for petrol and these things with Chevron, but they stopped that one so that we cannot use the resources. And later, even in the salvation period, that is coming from 1985 to 2019, they have been also confronted by the international sanctions enough. So no way to integrate our economy to the international economy. So this making a lot of difference. That is coming all from the political instability. So political stability is very important for any action in our economy.
Okay, so we have, I think we have few minutes, but I want a very important question about the education in Sudan. When the British in James Carey, he was the director of Gordon Memorial College, or also responsible for education. He set that policy that education has to be linked with the necessity or to be compatible with the resources or the need of the country to reap its resources. It started, but now, as you know, things went astray and the education is weak, and we have a lot of graduates and scarcity in skilled labor.
Yeah. There is a mismatch between the actual demand and the number of graduates that come out every year from these higher education institutions.
Yes.
And this is also part and parcel of our political and economic failures. I think the biggest economic failure is in the front of railways.
Yes.
You know, I'm really sad to see what happened to the railways. We had railway that linked Halfa in the north to Wow in the south, and Port Sudan in the east to Niala in the west,
Yes.
and to the production areas in Jazeera and Gadarif. It's really sad to see all this as gone.
Gone, yes.
And this should actually be one of the key areas that people should really think about. Education, of course, is also part and parcel of this failure.
It has to be linked to the
needs.
The needs, yes.
Of course, the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Labor, and the Minister of Higher Education, they need to talk to each other so that we don't admit 500,000 students at the universities and we don't know what to do with them when they graduate, you know? Something has got to be done in this front, otherwise we will end up graduating hundreds of thousands of graduates and we don't have job opportunities for them.
Yes,
yes,
okay, we have only 1 minute
yeah.
for one question. Very important question.
Let me just
We don't have
say
time.
about the education, because many say that it should be linked to the labor power or the labor needs. That is not my idea in any way, because now we have brought it, the education very, very much, to the extent that almost we have more than 300,000 chances of education in Sudan right now, university education, that can be admitted to the education. It's still, yes, the degree may be changed, but it's still the vast, that is very important for the Sudanese people. And now they have work also outside the country, because most of the Arab nations are using money of our graduates in many fields.
Yes,
that is also
that's
a
problem.
point.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. I had a lot of questions. Maybe next we will talk about the secession of the South, maybe in the episode as a result of the colonization and other factors. Thank you, Professor Mandur Abdullah Mandur, for being with me in this episode. Thank you, Ustad Osman Wash, economist and auditor, big auditor. Thank you, and politician. Thank you, dear viewers, for being with us in the last hour or so. Hope to see you next week in a different issue of Dialogue Horizon. Thank you. Bye.